All right, good morning. Fucking Merry Christmas. Yeah.
Christmas, yeah.
Yeah. It's great to fucking be with you guys on Christmas. It really is cool, It's a great vibe. Like in the morning there's always like resentments in families and stuff. There's boredom. Oh yeah. Yeah, kind of depression, like the fun is over. We would look forward to Christmas. Now we got fuck all to do till spring. Just work. It's good to be with dudes and having fun. And we got to get some hiking in here soon. So I think maybe tomorrow we do some killer hike if anybody's up for it. Like Los Lobos, drive down to Los Lobos, do a full fucking day hike, morning to night. About English teaching, because we talked about boom towns and that's great and everything, and you're gonna, with that boom town mentality, you're gonna hit some cool shit. Like that strike oil kind of idea is good, but there's also periods where you're gonna have to just make do and make money and sometimes get started. And teaching English online to children in China is really good business. It's a great business, and we could even stop the recording and try to call my friend Jason, who's been doing it for like 20 years. But let's do Rhett first, and while you're talking, come over here and talk, and I'm going to be texting on this phone to Jason to see if he's available. So I'll just tell you that I taught English for 7 years when I started, and the reason why was I would have never done it here, right? Like I'm not a grammar guy. Like I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I was not into school. I didn't like school, and I ditched school a lot, and so I never thought of myself as a teacher or anything like that. But then I got to Japan, and then like that was always the only way you could stay was visa. You had to teach English. Like at first I got the Japanese study visa, I think. Did I? Yeah. No. I realized right away I needed to get a job, so I got it. And then I found out that was a good way to get laid too, because the girls study to screw a foreigner. So at the time, so I thought, well, that would be I'll get my visa. I'll meet a lot of people. It'd be fun. So I did it, and then I got a job, and I was kind of shocked that I could do it. And but no, you can all teach English, all you guys. It's like teaching English is pretty cool. It's not a bad gig, and it's you get deep in the culture. Like you meet housewives, you meet businessmen, you meet kids, you meet girls, old ladies. They teach you stuff about the culture. It's not bad. I really enjoyed it. I really did. I did 7 years. So I taught everywhere from kindergarten all the way up to college, like 2-year college. I taught. I was a professor, and I also taught high school. And businessmen, a lot of businessmen. And it was a great introduction to Japan for me. A lot of people were very generous, and they want to teach you about their culture, and they take you out to lunch. Like, it's kind of ridiculous how well they teach. We don't think of teachers as special here in the West, but in Asia, they still respect teachers. It's a serious thing. They know that we don't take it the same way, so some people it's not the same respect as their teacher in high school, but some of them go full on. So you have to be careful. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're kind of in a position it's a kind of a weird position. So you got to kind of figure out where you're at so that you don't do anything embarrassing to yourself, right? But being a teacher is a good job, and it's interesting. Kindergarten was great because the kids are always excited, and they run around and fucking jump all over your back, and like if you like kids, if kids like you kind of person, you'll kick ass in English teaching. Like you'll just kick ass because it's like there's endless parents that want their kids to learn English around the world, right? And you don't need a PhD to talk to kids. So it's just a matter of you're good with kids, you like kids, you're in. Like once a school sees you and then they notice that you're good, then that's it, So, and because the kids will demand you and everything, right? So, anyway, a lot of my information is a little bit. I think it's good. It's kind of all-time kind of stuff, but at the same time, a little bit out of date as far as getting a job. What companies are good right now? What's the deal? And I think, as far as I understand, like the deal right now, the best deal, is online teaching to Chinese people. That seems like the niche right now. But you kind of have to be in the same time zone. They don't want you to be here in America teaching. So it's like as soon as you get to Asia, it becomes a realistic possibility because you're same time zone. Because they know you're not going to wake up in the middle of the night every time and be alert, right? So there's a certain rules they have. I know my friend teaches, and he said he can't change IP addresses. Like the school tests your internet, and then that's where you teach. You can't just go out to the park. And so there are some limitations to teaching English online. But you have your thing, and then you do it, and if you do good, it can be profitable. And so let's hear Red, who just went over there and just figured it out on his own. So it's kind of perfect timing. So talking to it, and I'm going to text Jason at the same time.
Okay, yeah, so there's two routes you can go with the teaching English. You can teach in
Here, come close.
You can teach in a physical school like the way Paul did it. I went into it as just a way to enable me to travel and be location independent. So obviously being locked in.
Wait, something's fucked up. Something's fucked up on the sound. Oh, you're just not talking. You got to talk louder. You got to.
I'm a quiet talker, guys.
I know, but I want to text Jason at the same time, so that's the hard part. You're coming right here, yeah. Just
All
talk
right.
fucking loud, yeah.
So I was just looking for anything to let me travel around and live where I wanted. Going into a classroom would be just like a 9 to 5 here, so that wasn't going to work for me. I had friends that have been doing the online teaching. Teaching English was never something that like I was interested in until it could enable this lifestyle. But the advantage is it's something we can all do. We all have that as a skill we can carry around the world with us. You don't need a fancy degree. You can get a teaching English as a foreign language certificate in a week for like $50. So that's like the minimum requirement that they're going to be looking for. I don't know how to make tons of money on it. Sounds like Paul's friend might be able to tell us about that. But I know
realistically, what'd you make?
Realistically, starting off, you can make $10 an hour. And once you build up a reputation and get people leaving you positive reviews, I've got it up now to $25 an hour. That doesn't mean you'll be 8 hours a day, $25 an hour. You still have to like build up a client list. But that's the kind of the...
Do you have to pay tax on that?
No, but the platform will take a percentage. So where I'm working, they take 15%. And it depends. There's a bunch of different sites. You can check the offers that they have. And then they'll just put the money in your bank account. It's up to you to do taxes and stuff. So yeah, like Paul is saying, it can be...
You can have a local bank account or whatever, you know. You can get... Some guys get paid on PayPal. For years, PayPal didn't demand a 1099 or whatever it is. So people got paid on PayPal, and then they just got paid. And you can get paid in WeChat. There's different ways to get paid. WeChat, you have to have a Chinese bank, so you got to go to China one time, set up a bank account. It's a little bit pain in the ass, but there are ways to do it, flexible, whatever.
In terms of the day-to-day...
Legality is up to you. Of course, you're going to do everything right.
The day-to-day lifestyle, I mean, you can just wake up and teach in your bed if you're lazy that day, or I've gone to the park before. It depends the rules. It depends on the rules of the different sites. Like,
that's cool.
And so usually you're teaching adults. You can teach like middle school, high school age kids. But basically you want to focus on people that already can speak English. They're just looking to get to a higher level or to practice with a native. Otherwise you're going to have to teach like the most basic elements of a language, and for that you do need more training as a teacher. But like this is like conversational English practice kind of thing, and so your customers are going to be like 18-year-olds practicing for the exam, the English exam to get into university. And then you got like professionals, like CEOs and managers that are looking to level up in their company. So the company's like, you need to improve your English because we talk to foreigners. So those are kind of the two categories, the professionals and the students, like going into college. So yeah, a normal day, I might like chat with a 17-year-old girl in China and then like a 22-year-old professional in Europe. It depends on the time zone you're in, where your customers are going to line up. So in Asia time zone, you'll get like Asians in the morning, and maybe like in your evening, the Europeans are waking up in their morning. But mostly it's Chinese. Chinese is the best clients. So yeah.
What is a class like? Let's say these are the students here. What would be the kind of like your lesson, or do you need to be like Albert Einstein to do this, or what kind of like book do you use, and like how does it work? Like so people can say, oh, I could do that, or that would be impossible for me. Yeah.
The easiest one to get started on has a script, literally PowerPoints. So the student comes in, you're like doing your thing, and the student comes in and you're like, hey, welcome to class. And the PowerPoint pops up and they've chosen like a lesson. Like let's say it's like verb tenses or whatever. So the lesson slide will be like, okay, today we're going to learn about verb tenses. And you just like read it out using your standard English accent, which is what they're there for. And then like they'll do their practice and you can correct them. And if there's some difficulty, you can type in the chat if they can't like understand, their verbal listening is not there yet. So you just follow the plan that the company has all laid out for you. Super easy. That's the one style. The one I'm on usually is more freestyle, and like, so you can just kind of be yourself, and like people will try you out, and it's basically a personality thing. If they jive with your personality, they'll come back. If not, it's no big deal. They had an hour talking and practicing their English, and that's like, you can do that however you want. You can talk about just like the news, you can ask them questions, you can role play, like if they're preparing for job stuff, you can role play. Like I've role played interviews and work situations. Just up to them, whatever. Just ask them, hey, how can I help you today?
So role play is just like, hey, let's do a job interview.
A lot of them
like,
want job interview
what
practice.
What is your name? And, you know,
you can just look online, job interview practice questions, and just like create your own lesson on the fly. And then you can get into teaching little kids. Teaching little kids is great. You just have to deal with the parents. The parents are the ones that can be a pain in the ass. Like they have higher expectations than adults learning English. So I like to stick to like 17-year-olds and up.
I had the opposite experience with kids because I went to kindergarten or somebody introduced me and I said, I can't do that. Like to me, I was afraid of kids. You know, I didn't know anything about kids. Like they freaked me out when I just thought at the time I was like in my 20s. I just didn't have any experience with kids and I was kind of scared of them. Because I remember they'd just come up and say things, you don't know my name. And I'd be like, yeah, I don't know. And I just feel embarrassed. I didn't know what to say to them. So I thought I was bad kids. I didn't want to. And so then my friend said, no, you'll be good. I got to go. I'm quitting this job. I'm going to introduce you. So I was like, okay. So I was like 1 day a week. So I was like, okay, I go down there. And then I just like acted like myself. There's all this shit around the classroom, right? There's like toys and colors and stuff. So I started throwing things around, and then the kids loved me. And then that was like super easy. Like the parents, like in that school, it was like based on location. So everybody lived in that area. So they need a teacher right there. Right. So like, they're so grateful that their kids are happy and doing whatever they're supposed to be doing, and that they can drop them off and do whatever they have to do. And it fits in their schedule and it's right there. And the kids are happy, and that's it. You're done. You're in. Like, you know what I mean? And then they were rich kids too. So it was even better.
With the online.
So it wasn't demanding at all. In fact, they were always saying like, we'll do more. I ended up taking them skiing and teaching them how to ski. We went up to the north of Japan, like teaching them they were training to be in the Olympics for trampoline. Yeah. So then we bounced on trampolines and they were doing all these flips and shit. And it was really fun. Yeah.
With the online, it's a lot of Chinese kids and China one child policy. So the parents, like, this is their one kid. They make their money and they like invest it. So they might like interview a bunch of teachers and like have kind of higher expectations than even an adult would. But like then the kids in there and they just want to like color and chat. But the parents like, hey, I want you to like help them practice for next week's like test, So, but it's no big deal either way. You all can do it. And it maybe not a long-term plan, but something to keep in your back pocket if you're between things, or you want to just do it for a few months to like have some extra money. I'd suggest just getting certified and like apply on one of these and keep it in your back pocket. You don't have to be active every day to keep your account open.
Yeah.
So you can even be like working on your side business and take little breaks throughout the day and teach a lesson, and then go back to your side business, work on the long-term project.
Yeah, like $10 an hour starting. That's like going to be the lowest, grindingest job. Like there's nothing lower than that. And $10 an hour in Thailand, like what I live for $850 a month. So what is that? 85 hours in a whole month, right? So it's 20 hours a week, 21 hours a week. It's not that much, like even on the grindingest job, but it changes fast when you teach English. It changes really fast. So for example, you could be teaching a $10 an hour, and then the parents will like you and they'll say, look, we want you to do private lessons for our kid. And then what do you charge for private lessons? And then you just ask your friends, you say, let me see if I can fit my schedule, and I'll get you the whole pricing and everything in it tomorrow, and then just talk to a bunch of teachers and say, how much should I charge them? And they'll tell you, and then they'll pay. Like the rich parents, like no problem. Like I had a kid, junior high school kid, used to come to my house, and I think he paid $80 an hour, and he was really fun to be around. He's a really smart kid. He was enjoyable. He's like super smart, actually. He was a big kid, but he was really smart, and he loved America. So it was like great, What did I do? I think I did 2-hour minimum. So it's $160. And they just handed me cash every time, $160. So I had him come over 3 times a week. And that was an extra, what is that? What's that? $480 a week, $2,000 a month. Just to teach this kid who was super fun. And I'd just run home. If I was a few minutes late, he didn't care, We'd just do it longer, So he was like, he didn't care at all. So, it's like, that was very good. And then I taught at a company. They paid me $200 an hour, minimum, 2 hours. So it was, $400 cash. Yeah. It was actually more because at the end was higher. That was more like $240. Yeah, it was like 89 to the dollar. So it was like $240 an hour cash. And I was teaching these nuclear scientists, all of them. And they wanted to fuck me. And I did. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. And because they were really smart. They were ugly, but smart. And so that was interesting because I never knew a nuclear scientist before, And they were like totally legit. Like they were like, so you run into these people that are very elite when you teach, and then they really don't really care about the money that much. And you're kind of like, it's hard to imagine, but you're like in demand. Like they don't have guys like you around to learn English like that. And it's very useful for them. Maybe they have an export company, and one deal for their company could be worth millions of dollars if they get that Walmart contract or whatever, and they need the English. So it's like they're not really grinding it out for money. Like they're not like, you know what I mean? So some people are, but not very many. Most people are pretty funky. Like you meet funky people like all the time, and then they'll do stuff for you. So you start with a 10, and then they'll move up to 25, but just be ready for like the random guy who is just going to pay you a lot of money to do something. And the family, they want you to fucking move in or whatever, just consider what you want to do and, keep it. I like to try everything once and then figure out like what's the best. I won't turn things down. I'll just kind of say, okay, I'll try that. And then if I don't like it or whatever, I'll just not do it, So that's the way to do it, I think.
So yeah, the clients are generally above average in intelligence. You're going to have like the top students, and
you'll be embarrassed. Like they're smart.
They're super smart people.
Yeah.
And so it's cool. You'll meet people from all around the world and even like build up a network, and they're so appreciative, and you guys like become friends that you can, even outside of lessons and stuff, continue to talk to them. I had one guy, he was starting a business and he's like going on about his problems. And it was something I could do. And I'm like, hey, do you need help with that? And he's like, you can do this? I'm like, boom, yeah. So he gave me like a $300 little project, a contract project. So if your mind is open and you're like trying to find possibilities. You can even use this to land like other kind of work, even get jobs this way. It's a great way to network.
Yeah, and I told it on a Ronin before, but one of my friends taught math at Princeton to some kid, and then his dad was the vice president of Morgan Stanley. He got a killer job.
So yeah, that's my experience. I'd love to learn how to make even more money doing it. So hopefully we can talk to someone who's making a lot of money doing it. And
it's really a great way to start. It's really a great way. Like, no matter what your skill is, there's some like niche you can go into. Like you, like with your unusual background in physics and stuff, you could get a job where you'd be teaching like some really different kind of students that we would have. And they're like interesting, like they might have some kind of big research project they're into, and they really need somebody who like understands physics and stuff to talk to, because they're going to want to talk about work and they're going to want to talk about this. So you will have cutting edge, like you know what I mean, whatever you're good at. Like if you have a little bit of a law background, you're going to definitely be gravitating towards a legal office kind of people, or like, you know, whatever.
Don't go into the mindset of I'm an English teacher. Go into the mindset of like everything that you've ever learned, all of your skills and experience. How can I use this to help the other person in every way that I can? Think of yourself as a personal consultant, and like you're completely unique. So if you have a background in physics, there's going to be literally people out there looking for an English teacher that has a physics background. So you'll know like the vocab, you'll know what the heck they're talking about. You can like review papers with them.
Yep.
So whatever your like specialty is, if it's programming or like engines, whatever it is, there's going to be some random person out there, and you're like the person they've been dreaming and hoping for and looking for, and they'll pay the premium money.
What are the platforms
I'll post a list later. There's like tons of options. I don't want to just go through them audio. I'll give you links, and you can, like, in the comments, we can post links to all the sites. There's like 20, 30 sites.
Yeah, there's a lot, and they're changing a lot too.
Changes.
So it's just a matter of just deciding, like, hey, I'm going to give this a try. I think you're right. Like, just do one class. Like, just sign up, see if you can do one here. And once you do it, you might like it better than your job here. You might quit and just go there right away. Like, it can happen easy. Like, it's funny. It's a funny kind of world, the English teaching world. And then a lot of people like will put down English teachers like, oh, you're just teaching your home language, you know. So once in a while you get put down, like somebody will just, and other expats, they kind of like, it's a cool thing to kind of look down on English teachers a little bit. It's, you know, like you just got to blow that off. Just blow it off, because, you know, you're getting like great connections and stuff. And like, it's like a lot of the friends I made was through English teaching in the beginning, you know, for sure. Right.
So, Rhett, if you don't mind sharing, like,
you got to, we're recording this. You got to come over here and talk in this thing. Yeah.
Paul lives with about $850 a month. What's your typical budget, you know, and the, I guess, standard of living kind of thing with $850, or what works for you? What's your budget, and what kind of things do you typically buy with your budget over there?
That's a good question.
Okay, yeah, I can speak to like Thailand and Vietnam. The pricing is similar, and my budget was between like $800 to $1,000. You can definitely do fine. Like, I'm not talking about going to clubs and partying and spending money on drinks and stuff. Like, that's where people blow their budgets out of the water. But if you just want to live a normal, comfortable lifestyle, $800 to $1,000 is enough.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So with 2,000, you're like living.
2,000 is like excellent lifestyle, no stressing. Like, don't even think about money with 2,000 a month.
And there's also things where you can spend a lot of money and not really get much back. So there's people like spending $4,000 a month. You see older guys are retired, and they'll have like pretty big budgets, $6,000 a month. So there's like people like doing, just like there's always dumb people everywhere. There's kind of like people like just blowing money on.
People like to blow their money on
just stupid stuff, like unhealthy food. Like they'll eat Western food every day. They can't eat Asian food, so every day they got to go to the Western hotel or whatever. And it's like, they're just getting crappier food and 10 times the price. So you do have to kind of reevaluate. If you're like a sandwich guy, you might want to become a beef noodle guy or whatever. You just kind of adjust to the local thing, and it'll be better. Like, I'm not saying it's not, it's like actually better. Like, fitting in is the way to go. It's like those guys are idiots, really, but they spend a lot of money. So there's those kind of guys.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
The incomes there are low, so there's always a low-cost option for everything, whether it's food, transportation, or housing.
So what about like a 2-bedroom apartment in a nice part of
2-bedroom apartment in a nice part of town. What would you say? Why would do you have a
okay,
do you have
fine. 1-bedroom apartment.
yeah, like a studio or a
I gotta
1-bedroom,
put my
right?
drum set somewhere.
Yeah.
Like right now, I'm in a condo, a 1-bedroom condo, and it's like under $150 a month.
Yeah. I did it differently. I did it differently. So I live very cheap, but I go for the better place. So we had a place. It was $600 a month plus utilities and internet, and I paid $300 and he paid $300, and I lived in his living room, right? And then he had the bedroom. It was a 1-bedroom, but it was a great building. Like, we had the killer sauna. You guys saw the videos, the killer pool, the killer gym, the library with Wi-Fi. So I could just work there. I could just sit there for 8 hours. It didn't matter. It's my building. It's like I could sit there all day. I could eat. I could talk on the phone, and I could, really work. There was a table with chairs, good back support. I could actually work. It was like having an office, really. And then I also had the gym, which gyms are expensive in Asia. They can be. So I wanted to get that included. So the gym was like $100 a month, a lot of them, So for $300, I got everything included, and I wouldn't even leave my building till 12. Like, I would always be there till 12, because I'd wake up at 7 and I'd go to the pool. I'd be there till 12, and then I'd go to eat, and then usually come back and sleep. So it was kind of like my building was kind of like my world. And then in the afternoon, evening, I would be out in Thailand. But I was pretty much in my own world. So it wasn't even like because I didn't have a job outside. So, I was just doing my real estate consulting. I just started Ronin Summit. I was just doing my stuff. But it's like weird, because you're thinking, oh, I'm going overseas. It's so different. In some ways, it's just better. It's just like living here, but better, because you have more options. It's cheaper. But for $300, that, to me, I'm right downtown. So if you guys ever visited, like, you would always have a hotel within like fucking stone's throw of my apartment. So I never had to go anywhere. Like, everybody would call me and like, I'm in a hotel. I don't know where I am. I'm like, where are you? What can you see out your window? It's like, I would walk there in 2 minutes, and I love that. Yeah, Sukhumvit, Soy 11. It was like perfect. Everything was there. So I found for myself, after 30 years, I gravitate towards the action. So it's worth it to pay a little more to be in the action. But instead of having my own apartment, I would share it with somebody, and we would divvy it up and have smaller spaces, because I wouldn't be in my room. So I'd be in the facilities of the building. So it's a lot of times you're thinking you need a big room. I don't think that's the way to think.
Over there,
Like,
nobody has a big room.
yeah, when you live in New York, like, you have this great city, and the more of a prison you build, the less you'll see of that city and the less people you'll meet, right? So it's better to have like a room, and then facilities and people and action outside the room, is because you don't pay for the shower and everything, and the sound is they're included, right? So if you just have a place to sleep, fuck girls, talk to your friends or whatever, then you got that, have friends over, and then you're out in the city. That's the best way to go, because an expensive apartment or do not buy a house. Do not rent an expensive apartment. Like, I lived in a room with no windows, $145 a month in my own place, and it included internet. When I came up with the Ronin Man idea, I just sat there in my room, and it was just great, because I could lock the door. It was my own place. It was privacy, it was quiet. It was kind of in the heroin district. It was like full, like all the NA guys. That's what's my bottom, was that area. Like, I lived right. I like the sleaze, so I lived right there, and it was just I enjoyed it. So My mom came and cried when she saw the room because it was a full boarding room. But I liked it because there was no down payment. I could move out in a minute. The guy who owned it was from Turkey, and he was super cool. We got along. And he taught me a lot of stuff. He helped me not get robbed once when I was kind of new. He fully helped me once, because I didn't know about one scam. But he saw the CCTV camera and came and helped me. So that was good for me. So don't think like I'm going to recreate my life over there. You just need a fucking place to sleep that's in a good area, and you're done. And that part is done. You're out in the city, you're meeting, you're learning, and then you got a little bit of money coming in, then you're solid, right? I think the big thing too is visas too. So in Japan and China, you're thinking about going to China again, right? Or for the first time, right? So China is it's a very interesting conversation, very timely. Like James talked, where's James? Oh yeah, we talked about Guyana, right? And the boomtown. China is like, now it's all COVID. Everybody's like, like worried. See, this is blue pill thinking. Like, action is happening, guys. Right? So change is happening, right? So all the foreigners are getting kicked out or they left, and everybody's disappointed in this and that. But China it's a huge country, has huge needs for English teachers, huge. So my friend, I got a friend who was a recruiter for a top school in Beijing. He said it was really fun to work there. He got $6,000 a month, and they treated him like a king. They had Arabian horses at the school. Yeah, everybody dropped off the kids in Rolls Royces. Yeah, and we can talk to him, we can call him, and he would get a piece for bringing teachers over. And so there's things like that are really funny. I had another friend who had a similar job in India, where it was the same thing, Arabian horses, Rolls Royces. And it was like she met everybody cool. It was in Bangalore. It was like Silicon Valley of India. So India is interesting. And China now, because all the foreigners left. See, the thing is, you guys don't know, but Asians need connection to the West. There's like a real need for that connection because they're exporting, right? Like we're importing, so we don't really need it. We can import from anywhere. But it's different mindset in Asia. They're all exporting. Their brother has a factory. Everybody's like, producing. And so the connection to the West is really important, actually. They can sell to Africa. They can sell to other places and make some money. But usually the bulk of the money is going to come from North America, Western Europe, Australia, generally, right? And that's to your advantage, a huge advantage, because you guys are from there. That's fucking perfect. You don't really realize it, but you're from the client, right? The client state, and they need that. So there's all kinds of needs. And then also on top of that, you were talking about the insane test system in Asia. Is basically the Chinese invented standardized testing. They invented it. So way back, it's like they had to figure out a way to find talent in the country. So they set up these very difficult series of tests, and so you could rise up from like a low-level person. So that's China. It's just very brutal. Like it's testing. It's every little point. Every point matters. Here we have so much. It's so easy in the West, right? You can pull it off because you were in these sports teams and everything. It's like the top students in China are really fucking smart, and it's like very fucking hard. So because it's so competitive, that's interesting. I don't know why I started talking about that.
The creativity they have.
The creativity is. I will say I disagree because we don't either have the creativity. The creativity came in the West. When the West really started making inventions was when the Germans invented R&D. So before that, everybody just worked. Like you were a shoemaker or whatever. The Germans were the first ones. That's why they had all that technology. People think the Germans is because of the culture. It's because they were the first ones who invented R&D. So R&D is the first people in the world who were paid not to work. That never happened before in man's history. They said, look, here's a bunch of chemicals. Here's a free space. Make something valuable. Test things. Figure out something, right? That was a German invention. And after they started R&D, Germany exploded with bullet trains and like jet engine, everything exploded. It was because they took intelligent people and put them in a work environment where they could just create things. Our scientists or inventors had no support. So they did great things, but they didn't have the support. The Germans were like, we got to take them and make them so they're not worried about eating. So they can know that they have food every day. And give them enough money, their family is going to be okay. And then that exploded, and then the U.S. copied that. Yeah, and we put money into R&D, and then we exploded. And then the Chinese, they learned that. So now they're doing heavy R&D investment. Japan was the same way. Japan would copy. They thought they were so smart. And they got to the edge and they realized, oh shit, we can never catch up by copying. So they realized R&D was the thing. So now Japanese R&D is super serious, right? So it's just a matter of investing in R&D. So China is now investing in R&D. So there's Huawei just, for the first time, had more money from patents coming in than going out. And that was just yesterday or the day before. That's a huge thing. Because now they see the value. You're going to see Chinese creativity explode. It's going to happen because the Communist Party, I don't like them. I fucking hate them, but they are smart. And they figured it out, so they invested. So now they're investing. They stole everything to get the basic knowledge, and then they're like, here's the knowledge, here's some money, produce, make something new, or you get kicked out, right? Because it's competitive, right? And so they're fucking making shit, testing shit, doing shit. So it's important to know how we became number one, because if you get confused, you'll start to think, you'll just get into the racial thinking. And it's not the truth I really isn't. There are structural things that make countries kick ass, right? And if we forget those things, we will get crushed. It's like you got to do those things to win. And the West needs to know why we succeeded. It was because we did the smart things, right? We invested. IBM, Silicon Valley. It all started with defense investment, right? The satellites, the phones, everything, right? So it's a great question. But when you work in China, you'll see that creativity is I totally see. Chinese creativity is out of control right now. Their electric cars, they're just doing, those have a little hook here and a little thing and some kind of cool LED lights underneath, blue lights under the car, built in when you get a custom. And so it's just young people like that. They're always trying stuff. They're always pushing. In China, they call it China time, China speed. I worked in some different businesses in China, and I was just amazed how quick people learn there, how quick they move on, and how they'll just take something like Amazon, and then they'll spin it and keep improving, and then Amazon just gets out of China. It's not always that they're stealing and everything. A lot of times they're just kicking our ass, and it's important to know that. Yeah. So it's important to hire those guys, right? And it's good for me too, because it got me into this China speed thinking. To me, people here are very slow and boring. I find Asia much more exciting and things moving very fast, and you can really do something. You can think and change. I don't know why that. I think maybe it's because there's so many people that it just becomes competitive. Regulations. There's a lot of Japan has a lot of regulations too, though. But yeah, it slows down Japan for sure. I fucking hate regulations, yeah, and licenses and all the corruption here. Yeah, I fucking hate it. We got to get rid of.
Bezos, your idea ain't coming through.
Yeah.
Or Elon.
Yeah, they try to crush everybody who wins here. Yeah, but they've got their own negatives in Asia. But there's also some really you really gain by working in Asia as a man. I think there's a big benefit to you, and you get out of your lethargy. I think, and it's good for you just to get kick in the ass and realize, oh fuck, things are because you'll bring a new technology over, and sure they don't have it yet, but as soon as they see it, they're like,
Yeah.
and they're yeah, and it's just moving along, and they're.
Isn't that the same thing that happened in Japan?
Yeah.
70s, 80s. I grew up watching the Japanese products.
Yeah, the Japanese, they basically bought the transistor. They got the right to use the transistor patent. The biggest thing, interesting thing about Japan is how did Japan rise up? Yeah, the U.S. helped them. Yeah, they stole stuff. But the biggest thing was, and this is a very good lesson actually, is that we had built the electronics industry with tubes. You know, have you ever seen, some of you young guys, the tubes? Have you seen a tube amplifier or anything?
Yeah, I've seen this.
Yeah, they light up and they're very interesting. Like I had a preamplifier with tube. They're very nice, but they're work. Like they take work to maintain and change the tubes and test them, and it costs money. And transistors are cheaper, more reliable, but they're not quite as good in many ways. And if you're really a purist, you know. So basically, whenever people invent things, they get emotionally tied to it, right? And so we thought, you know, when transistor came out, and I forgot who invented the transistor. Was it? I can't remember who invented it. I know, but I can't think of it right now. But so anyway, we invested in the transistor, which is a way to make solid state, right? So you no longer needed, like solid state batteries. There's not going to be chemicals in them, right? It's like there's a lot of advantages, right? And so we invented the transistor, but we weren't using it. It's because of politics, because each company was set in a hierarchy, and all the kings of each industry were tube guys. And they're like, hey, tubes are better, like horses before cars. They were just like, horses are great. They go up hills, you know, they don't make any noise. You know, there's a lot of advantages to horses before you build all the roads and everything, right? Gas stations, you know, when you're in dirt, you know, horses are just, you know, a lot of people just stick with those things, right? Especially if you invented the horse, it's different, right? So we invented the tube and so then the transistor, we didn't really use it. So Sony, Akio Morita, went to the States and he got the approval of the Japanese government, and then he got a bunch of money and he said, I want to make radios. And they're like, you can't make no one's going to buy them. They're not proper, you know, powerful enough. And so he bought the rights to make transistor products, took them back to Japan, and then he started making radios, and they were cheap and easy to use. And then those were, and people looked down on them, and then they started selling them. And then, of course, the transistor got better, and then better and better and better and better. So basically, the main shift in Japan was the shift from tube to transistor. That was really the story. If we would have known earlier to switch, we could have destroyed them. Because we had all the technology, we had all the factories, we had all the knowledge connections, all the clients were here. You know, we could sell to them, we knew them, same culture, it was easy. If we would have just doubled down on the transistor, Japan would have never risen, because everything was based on that, pretty much. So much of all the Japanese electronics, everything, right? There was other things, but this was a big one. And so I think the thing about China is they don't have any attachment to the things we invented. So like, for example, electric cars. We have all these gasoline car companies, but they never were good at making gasoline cars in China. They never really they didn't have the engineering to really do gasoline cars, but electric cars are really easy to make, actually. And so this is their chance. They're going to destroy us in electric cars. Yeah. I guarantee you, it's already happening. They're going to do good. I mean, they're going to, because it's a shift to electric. It's those times is when monumental shifts happen in countries, right? So, you know,
experts are saying the same thing.
Yeah.
About the electric car.
It's very likely. I've watched it. I've been thinking this for like 20 years. I've been watching it. I knew they couldn't catch up because they tried to catch up with cars. You know, they would like force them to do joint ventures, and they just couldn't get the tech. They couldn't do the engineering, the Germans. But now it doesn't matter. They're going to crush the Germans, and they want to crush the Japanese. That's the big one. They want to crush the Germans and the Japanese, and then the Americans finally. Yeah, so they got a plan, right? So these things happen, and when you're in the middle of them, it's good for your brain, I think. It's very good for your brain to be in the middle of all this crazy shit and all this competition. And of course, you got the different cultures and everything. It's going to Asia is not like going to Patagonia and climbing a mountain. It's like so different. You know, you're going overseas, but you're going to a place where a lot is happening. It's a lot going on in China, a lot of things. And so it'll be good for your mind. It's good for your thinking, your creativity, and everything. So yeah, what other thoughts do you have, like on anything? This doesn't have to be English teaching. Anything I said, or because he went after La Jolla.
He showed us some very nice experiences that he's
Okay, but there's more. There's more though. There's more. That's the thing. There's so much more. Like the women are just like a side thing. Like the guys making friends with Asian guys, like being like one of the guys, and it's very good.
Making friends with Asian guys.
Yeah, that's a very, very good one. It's making friends with Asian guys, because I know for myself, when I first got there, I couldn't even see Asian guys. Like I just saw the girls. It's like I had a pair of glasses and they just didn't show up. NPCs, I could not see Asian guys. Like I just would because I was like, oh my gosh, And then after 10 months in Japan, I realized I was completely fucked up. Like I was embarrassed. Like I realized it just becomes very estrogen and girly. It was not even good for me. It was like, not to mention it's totally retarded, but I was just surrounded by just fucking girls all the time. I was like, and then I realized that guys exist, and I was like, wow, there's a bunch of guys around here too, And then I started to, help people. Like for example, 12-step, I'd help people. I started to make friends, and then we started to hang out, and then that was good for my language because I started to talk in a masculine way. Because there's two ways to talk in Asia. There's like a feminine and a masculine way. And I was talking in a feminine way, which doesn't matter that much. But I just started to get the perspective, of, the men in Asia. And that was very good for friendships and good for, kind of good for everything. Like those guys that are just chasing women in Asia, that's not the way to be. It's not the, you're going to get plenty of fun wherever you go, right? It's like, you don't want to be that clown, basically. You want to be a respected man in the society. And in Asia, see, the thing is, here's the thing in Asia, is they understand men need to fucking come. Here, they don't understand that. They don't. Like in Japan, like after the war, when it was a colony, they said publicly, I forget the prime minister or whatever, said, we have to have brothels for these beasts coming over to keep them satisfied so that there's not riots, and rapes and stuff. So they did that. They understood that men just need to be satisfied, and that's the way it has to be. And Asia, they understand. They don't have to say much. It's old culture. They'll understand, that guys need the affection, and there's certain things guys need, right? So if you're just like, I'm all about that, like I wasn't. You might have thought that, but I wasn't at all. Like I was totally making friends with guys. And then like the top Chinese guys and Japanese guys, they get plenty of action, but it's all on the down low. It's like on the down low. Don't be the guy, as I would recommend. I mean, you can do it in the beginning or whatever, but don't be the guy who's out at the fucking park with the girl and kissing her and doing all the things the locals don't do, because you're just building resentment. You're just building fucking hatred of yourself. And also, it's just no class. Like, it offends the society. It's bothers people. So you're just like, I'm out in public, and we're just like bowing each other and stalking and everything. And then in private, it's just like wild sex, fucking blowing wads in her ass. It's awesome. But that's in private. And it's like respect in public. So, like I'll take a girl, and she'll be so dirty and awesome and just have a great time. And then we come back to it was really weird in the beginning. Just come back to the station, take her back to the station, take her home. And then she would like bow and say, oh, thank you. Good to see you, and pretend like I was like, did we just do that? like I was like, I wanted to kiss her and they would move away. I was like, didn't understand. But you'll learn to kind of, to be welcome in the country. And then part of that is it's not rubbing it in people's faces. You see people here doing that too. That like get a lot of girls. So they don't understand. Like the resentment is deep. I want to have a good time, but I'm not. Like I have confidence. I don't need to put people down, right? And that's the bottom line. It's like I got this shit. You know what I mean? And you don't, right? It's like you can get more in Asia not doing that. And better girls too, way better girls. Like the girls that will go along with that, you don't want those girls. The good girls, they're way better in your life in Asia, right? The ones who understand that.
So 2 ways that I've made friends. Number one was to join a Muay Thai boxing gym, a small one where you got like one instructor. People just keep coming back every week, same people, so you get to know them. And like be in situations where you're going to keep running into the same guys. Any kind of martial arts, fitness, sports, whatever sport you're into, join a club, just keep going to the same place. Number two, even the guys overseas, they're looking for foreigner friends. A lot of them, they want to practice their English. You're a novelty. So if you go on, there's some sites and apps you can go on for people to practice language. And some of the guys will be just like, hey, do you want to meet up once a week for coffee? I just want a foreigner friend and I want to practice my English. So
Yeah, people will tell you that. I just want a friend, foreigner friend or whatever. And it's very weird in the beginning, but it's all right. Test it out. You know, maybe some of those guys will be cool.
yeah, I mean, we want a local friend, so it's okay that they want a foreigner friend. Let it happen.
Yeah, true. And then you start to get into the groove and see things, and it's good. It's a good experience. You know, a lot of people don't have that. They never have that.
Totally get local guy friends because the girls have their own agenda and the guys are the only ones that are going to be able to see, that girl's like trying to do that thing with you. Like, and you're like, oh, I thought she was just being nice. And, they know the local girls' real games and their tricks, so they can save you from a lot of traps.
Yeah, for sure. But other expat friends can be really good too. Even Facebook groups to follow, like Thailand expats or whatever, there's like 20,000, 30,000 people. And of course, there's a lot of horror stories, but it's not exactly every girl, but it's still interesting to read, like don't give girl money for sick buffalo, there's no sick buffaloes. They don't get sick.
That's the obvious. Yeah. That's the obvious stuff. But I mean, these guys grew up next door to these girls and so they understand the culture on a deep level, and what better way to learn POA kind of stuff than from a local? Right. Teaching it in the way that the locals do it, like respecting their culture and what's most effective there.
I think it's a balance too. Like I want to really integrate myself in the culture and everything, but the really my personality is like I don't have to fit in here or anywhere. So it's like a balance. Like I really enjoy the culture, and I really like, if you saw me with Chinese people, you'd think I totally, or Japanese out to dinner or whatever. But there is a part of me I just keep myself, It's like I don't want to, I'm not confused. I will never be accepted as an Asian by society. Like I know that. So I have to protect myself a little bit, because in the end they just see me a certain way, the way I look or whatever. So I'll never be really accepted. So I can handle that. I understand. I have a special, like I'm, you know what I mean? Like I'm not, I can deal with it, the complications of this,
I'm someone that's interested in other cultures, and it's kind of a fun thing for me to see how far I can go.
You're more on that side. Yeah.
And like, take it from me, I tried as hard as I can, and however good you get in the language and the culture, you will never be accepted in Asia as like a local. You will always be a foreigner. So you just have to accept that role. It is good to learn about the culture and the language, but however comfortable you become to feel, they're still going to see you and see you as a foreigner. It's not like here where Americans can look like anything, and a guy that got his citizenship yesterday is equally a citizen as someone born here. Over there, it's more of a tribal mindset. So if you weren't born here, like...
Oh, you could be born there. It doesn't matter. If you look like us, it doesn't matter. You're born there. You got a passport and everything. I know guys like that. It's like they have to leave too. It's like, you're never going to be accepted.
Racism exists.
It's not America.
Everywhere.
Yeah. You're not going to be accepted. You're not American. You're not Chinese. Chinese. You're not Japanese. They'll say that. They'll say, "Oh, your Japanese better than mine." We think you. It's like but you just have to go to this convenience store, and they're like, "How long have you been here? When are you going home?" It's like you're never gonna. You just have to understand. Yeah, the society as a whole. You might have a group of friends that's very unique. Like we have a group of unique friends here, right? But when you deal with other people, you're gonna always go back to whatever the lowest common fucking denominator is. You're gonna run into that shit.
And I'm talking how the average person will see you. If you make a close friend, they're going to see you as a close friend, and the foreigner stuff doesn't matter so much. But just walking around on a day-to-day basis, you're going to stand out as a foreigner forever.
Yeah, like I kind of, like a lot of times I wish I could just change clothes into like being an Asian guy because like most days I don't want to be a foreigner because I'm just like an Asian guy. I just cruise around, eat noodles, and do all the shit everybody does. And I wish I could, because just my face bothers people. You know what I mean? Like just having this face makes a certain reaction. Like I wish I could take the skin off and just go. Like most days, I just want to be Asian guy, but you can't. You're like, because people always see that. They always like, there's no way. You know what I mean? So he's like, you just kind of have to deal with it. It's like, especially when you're sick and you're fucking, you know what I mean? You're already fluent. You've been there, and then you're just like a foreigner. It's like and then people are like, oh, they treat foreigners good, and there's all this mythology. Your life is so easy, and meanwhile, like most people leave because they can't handle it. It's like it's difficult. It's difficult. Life is difficult, and it's complicated. So you got to respect. Like everybody has a different experience in Asia, and people will say, oh, if you're black, it's no good. You're gonna be fucked. You're not gonna get done in Asia. Do not believe that at all. Yeah, if you're white, you're gonna treat it like this. If you're Asian, you're gonna treat it like. There's all these people telling you this stuff, and it's not true. You have to discover for yourself. I'm not saying it's going to be, you're not the same. You're not going to be treated the same. Whereas here you are more treated the same. Over there, it's like super clear. Like every day, like you're going to be like they would call us in Japanese, gaijin, and you would be kokujin, right? So that's a different word, right? And they would call you gaijin sometimes, but everybody knows they're bullshitting because that word does not really mean black guy, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Over here, go try and get a job at an Asian food place.
Yeah,
you can't even do it here. They won't even let you work there.
Yeah. And so it's like the complications of this is amazing, actually. And I tell you one thing about racism. It's very interesting. You will forgive a lot of people when you travel. You'll go back to the country you're from, your parents are from, and you'll see the way you're treated as a guy who wasn't born there, and you'll see the way people were treated. You'll be like, no, man, not like that, man. That's not cool. Like that person is not, and then you'll realize how far like we've come, just by being together and learned, you really forgive a lot of people when you, and if you want to help people, like I'm always trying to help people do things like get off drugs or drinking or whatever it is. And like, I realized that like PUA, for example, the way that you approach every person has to be different, and you have to be mature enough to handle that. Like your approach in Bangkok and my approach would be very different. It's easy for people to get very butthurt about, I can't fit in and you got this, and you have to it's hard. It's fucking hard, and it's complicated, and most people can't explain it. I've been there 30 fucking years, and I've thought about everything because I have friends, and so I can answer a lot of questions on this one. But it's really complicated. But there's some ways it's good and bad and this and that. Like I was pretty resentful in Japan about one thing. My friend, he's Korean American, born in Korea, speaks Japanese, speaks Korean, and I had a company, and I could never get a loan. But I was making money. Like my companies were solvent, and his companies were losing money all the time. And he was Korean, and supposedly Japanese, quote unquote, hate Koreans, And he got he ended up with $3 million in loans that he got from the bank. Now that ended up being terrible for him because he wasted the money and he owes the money. It was painful for him. So, and I'm actually glad I couldn't borrow the money. And I'm glad I couldn't buy a house. But they wouldn't let me buy a house. I had the money. I could not. I had the vice president of the bank was a school friend of my good friend, like the high level guy, and even he couldn't do it. He's like, he didn't say it. Basically, you're a white guy. You're fucking good. We're not gonna give you a loan. Yeah, basically, yeah. Like there's always these arguments and everything. But my friend, the Korean guy, he's walked in and fucking got loans with not even buying a house. There's not even any fucking collateral. Ends up with $3 million. And you get $1 million, then 500,000. I was just like, how does, that's so unfair. It's so unfair. And if you have kids in Asia, they will never be accepted. So they'll never have a home. If you have kids in Asia, they'll be like gypsies. They'll never have a home. They won't be home here. They won't be home there. If you look Asian and you have a kid, you're gold in Asia. As long as they're born there and they speak the language native, your kids will be totally accepted. Yep, totally. And bullshit or anybody who says otherwise. It is 100% true. Our kids will never be accepted in Asia. It's just the way it is. And, you just got to...
Even if...
It's just the way it is.
So their location, but they were born here?
No, doesn't mean shit. The color of their skin, man, they don't fit. They're not... They upset people.
Perfect accent.
Japanese
accent doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah. They could be scholars in Japanese. Like, they could have got a PhD and be like, literally, I have friends that grew up in Japan. They're like, absolutely, they're because they're white and they're born in Japan, they were like kind of resentful about it. So they went the scholarly route, and they went like the real, the real Japanese route. Like got a PhD in Japan, all in Japanese, right? And it still doesn't mean shit. Yeah.
I have friends that grew up here, both Chinese and Mexican, and they told me that exact thing, that they're almost rejected back home because they were raised here and they speak the language. I mean, from my perspective, they're as Chinese as could possibly be, but they talk about how when they go back home, their family like really just kind of black sheeps them and stuff.
Here's what happens. Very interesting. So let's say where's your family from? Where are your relatives? Far away relatives. Yeah, do you know?
Like ancestrally?
Yeah.
Jamaica, Puerto Rico, and Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say Jamaica. If you go back to Jamaica, like say now, you go to Jamaica and you try to make a life, and at the beginning you'll let's say most people, they're like, I want to fit in, I got Jamaica, I'm and then after like a couple months, you get fucked over a few times and you end up hanging out with the foreigners. It's like it happens. Like you come with like a full resentment, like ready to go. I'm integrating. Fuck this place. I'm going back home. Like I did the same thing in Finland. I went to Finland. I'm 100% Finnish, right? All the way back, right? So I went to Finland and they wouldn't fucking accept me. I'm just like, they would not accept me at all. Closed door, And I was like, I thought I was going to be totally accepted. I mean, like it's a small country, right? And I'm like 100%, like I grew up going to saunas and my parents speak, like I thought for sure,
You didn't have the accent. You didn't have the
who knows?
mannerisms.
Who knows? You just don't get accepted. Like, it's just the way it is, It's like fucking, it's not just the skin color, it's the culture. It's that is brutal for Japanese Americans who go to Japan. Like the ones who really love Japan, they grow up telling people, I'm not American, like I'm Japanese, and they go there with high hopes, and it just gets fucking crushed. And they're like, these are my people. And they treat me worse than the other foreigners. Now, if they continued on, they could find their place. And their place is pretty good in the end. But it's a hard road because you are always a foreigner because you weren't raised there. But they don't know that because they usually give up. But there is a place. That's what I'm saying. You all have to find your unique. This might seem ethereal, but if you live there somewhere for a long time, this is very fucking good shit. You'll realize there's like these invisible places for you and where you can be comfortable, and also you can see other people too. You'll have a lot more forgiveness for people. I swear to God, you'll have a much more mature view and you won't get butthurt as easy and you'll just be a man of the world. You'll be a man of and it's a great place to be. I think it's the ultimate, for me, it's like the ultimate goal is to get past that. Because you'll have these things in your mind. And also the expat groups will have things. Like I talked about it before, but like the Pakistanis, a lot of Pakistanis and Iranians went to Japan. And when they first got there, the expat groups were totally separate because they were like old school Iranians, right? I mean, they were like they did some weird shit. They did some weird shit. Like it was like they'd break the toilet seats. There was just all kinds of weird shit, and you were just kind of like, what, you know? And so the groups didn't mix. But after like 15 years in Japan, I realized like they were some of my best friends because they were forced to make businesses. So they would export cars or automobile parts, used parts or whatever. And so they were forced to have a business because they couldn't teach English. And so they had to make some other business that was like no roadmap, you know, and they had to do a real business. And they ended up being, they also matured and they realized like they saw us a certain way. So they'd be like, those guys have it easy, you know, those guys. And then we were like, those guys, I don't know what the fuck they're doing. You know, who knows what the fuck, there's something illegal because they were breaking the law like crazy, selling meth or whatever. And so they were doing all kinds of shit.
Had to find a way.
They were just doing all kinds of shit. But after a certain period, we came together.
Think of it like a movie. Like going over there, you cannot play every part in the movie, but there still is a role that we can fit. There are multiple roles, and we are valued in many different ways. I just know where the lines are that foreigners are gonna like be able to thrive, and some things are not even possible at all. Like owning property.
A lot of things are not possible.
Right,
You got to accept that shit right away. Like, even if it totally pisses you off, you just got to get that out of your mind and say,
You just have to
I can't do that. I shouldn't do that. Okay, next.
see things how they are, make the calculation in your head like I did. I saw I'm not going to have this, I'm not going to have this, but it's still the better deal for me.
Yeah.
Accept it for what it is. You have to accept the deal or not.
And
Take the good stuff with the bad stuff, or don't go.
Yeah. And yeah, true. Fuck, that was pretty fucking good. Does anybody have any questions or like throw something? Come over here. Yeah.
This is kind of just maybe a left field kind of thing, but has anybody or have you ever heard of the Black Ocean Society of Japan? But also, if you haven't, I was pretty interested in what you said earlier about kind of living in like sleazy districts and stuff like that. Because you said how like being in China and being around all these businesses and all these shifts kind of activates your mind. Do you feel like kind of being in these darker alley type of places, does that have a similar effect in some ways?
Oh yeah. Well, for me, see, I'm like an outcast, right? When I go around the world. So like I like outcasts. So I'm gonna go. It's easier to talk to them. They don't have like the hierarchy so much. As long as you don't look down on them and you're cool, they're like, hey, here's what's up, and they'll tell you, right? And you're like, okay, all right, and that's good for me. And I think too, the down low places, they're just more quicker. They're gonna fucking know what's up. So I like the you know what I mean? Like in the old days before the internet, there was like telephone cards. And like if you wanted if you wanted to get a telephone card, like basically any local dude here would pay like let's say a certain amount for a telephone card. But if you went to like a I don't know, Bangladeshi guy in LA, you get that thing for $1, right? And like there was like groups and you get a flight for super cheap. It's because they knew what was going down, and food and like the scams and the deals and how to get past. Like I wanted like a phone without a contract, things like that. They're always going to know. And basically, everybody just gets too lazy and fat and just retarded for me. So the guys that are doing shit, they know what's up. It's always good to be around those guys. You get the fucking lowdown, and they realize you're the kind of guy that has some stuff to give to them too. So they're like, okay, all right. Here's what's going down. Here's how it goes. And then you can kind of you can quickly settle into a group like that. And then you can build out, to other things, right? Because I think that's the key, is to be able to deal with everybody at every level, So you can go to a congressional dinner or whatever, and you can fit in, Or you could go to like a bunch of heroin addicts, and you can fit in, You can hang with these guys, And that's because they all have something to teach you, right? But when you're coming in new, if you get like a sugar mama, then don't do it, go in with that and see how that goes, because that could be interesting. But in general, it's easier just to kind of, those places, things just move fast, food's available, and there's not a lot of blocks, and it's usually the place to be. It's more fun. Shit's going down. You learn faster,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. It's not you're not going to buy heroin or anything. It's just like you just that whole scene, like they got to figure out a way to make a living, and they got all these ideas, like who knows, right? They got, like, for example, I was in Japan. Okay, so I was in Kyoto, and it was snowing, and I was like, fuck, I wanted to go up the mountain to these temples, and I was like, I gotta fucking get up there, but I don't want to take a taxi, so I think I can ride a bike up that snow, I think. So I was like, I need a bike, right? So bikes are like $300 then. So I just went to the homeless area, and I just started chatting up the homeless guys. And then one guy's, oh, come into my house, meet my wife. So we're in this cardboard house and everything. And I sat down with him, and he made me tea or something. And he's like, I'm like, I need a fucking bike, but I'm not going to be here very long. So I don't want to like rent it for like $300, like basically the hotels, I said, I just need a bike, and then I can just give it back. Can I find a way to rent a bike from you guys? And he's like, I know a bike. And then we went up the hill, mountain, whatever, and there was like a deep well, and there was a killer bike had fallen in there. Yeah, way down there. So we got a hook and a rope and pulled it out, and I paid him his rental fee. And then I came back and gave the bike back to him. And it was a high quality bike. It was a full killer mountain bike, right? Yeah. Yeah, and that way I could,
How much did you pay?
had like knobby tires. I could go up the snow. What did I it was probably $30 for like a week or something. Like the homeless guys, they know what's up, So I'll check with them. If it doesn't work, doesn't work, One of the guys I talked to, he said, I used to be in the Yakuza. He goes, here's my card, He showed me his like official fucking thing. He's like, what times are hard, Like I learned a lot from talking to this. Because I grew up with a bunch of scumbags. I grew up in Trailer Park. Yeah.
Any other questions?
It seems like there's, not really a downside if you're a foreigner with kind of interacting with that seedy element.
Yeah.
Because locals, if they want to be kind of accepted in the regular status quo, they can't really interact with that seedy element. So it's like one of the perks of being a foreigner, because since you're not going to be accepted anyway,
Right.
you can kind of
Right.
get the benefits of
Right.
associating with like a seedier kind of
Like
element.
you're allowed to.
Yeah, and people it won't reflect badly. You're not going to be accepted anyway, right?
They don't
This is like-
understand it. They'll be like, oh, you shouldn't talk to those guys or something. And it's like, oh, he's cool. And they're like, foreigners are just different. Yeah, you can break the rules that way, Yeah, yeah. As long as you're cool and you don't get them in any trouble, and they're just like, he's a foreigner. They don't understand. Okay, it's fine, Yeah, those guys, man, are good to know, man. Those guys that are just getting shit done on them. It's like, they're very good to know. I've always known that they are just very sharp, quick thinkers, and know what's going on. Because I don't like to fuck around. I don't like to make a big financial commitment before I buy something. I want to know, right away, what the fuck's going on, right? There's always some way to do it. Yesterday we bargained the bus down, right? I'm always going to we got a deal on the bus, right? It's just always, working something, right?
We learned something.
It's good experience,
Your van.
Yeah.
JB's
Yeah.
van.
Yeah.
Come on, you gotta tell that story, JB.
You tell him.
JB.
You tell him.
Okay, I'll say it real quick. JB's got.
You got to, if you're going to say it, just say it here.
JB has I keep on saying if a girl walks into your room, you're free to make a move. JB brings the room to the party. He has a van that he takes to the party, and it's ready to go.
Yeah, a lot of pickup guys do that. They have a van outside, so they can just take somebody in there.
Big van too.
Yeah.
You don't walk into it.
Yeah. Jeffy RSD, that was his thing, is the van. Yeah, he's got it all tricked out, with lights and shit. Once you get in there, there's nothing else to do, right? Yeah, that's the way my apartments are. We're set up, Yeah, there's only one thing, right? Yeah. Okay.
So what kind of trouble can you get into if you get involved? Not Not directly, but just if you talk about politics in China specifically, like
okay,
I just
yeah.
want to know like what.
Yeah,
what would
politics.
happen, what could happen.
Basically, like I look for trouble, so I went there to fight in the Tiananmen Square massacre. Right? You know, I wasn't one to be shy about that, and yeah, I mean, whatever. You know, let's see. The basic way the communist government thinks is they're smart. Okay, they're practical because it's Confucianism too. It's like an old culture. It's not just communism. It's like a mix. Their basic thinking is this: is like you can have some fucked up thinking, but as long as no one's listening to you, it's fine. So you know, like whatever, as long as you're not leading anybody, they don't really care. And then you know, you usually, but if you're leading a group and it's getting bigger and bigger, that's when they crack down. So it's they don't really care that you don't believe this or you think that. Doesn't matter, you know. Yeah, I mean, if you're out preaching, you got a bunch of people following you, and you're planning an insurrection or something, you know, then you get on their radar. Then they'll crush you, right? Yeah.
So they don't really care if you're talking with like a group of friends. And you're like, yeah.
No, nobody really gives a shit. In fact, discussions in China are much more interesting politically than here. You know, much more interesting. Yeah, you know, you say you can't talk about politics here. You can totally talk about it in China. No problem. No problem. Really? Oh yeah, you can say a totally different opinion to them.
It's not like
and they'll say,
like we hate.
here's my opinion. What's your opinion? Okay, here's my opinion. You know, and usually they're right because they're pretty smart people. Like you have to really, a lot of times they'll say, you know, you're naive or something. You know, it's hard to take, you know. And then you think about it and you're like, yeah, okay, yeah. So a lot of things people said to me, I didn't understand at the time. But then many years later, I realized he was fucking right, you know. So it's like you come over as a naive Westerner and you start to learn kind of the realities of the world, right? You know, in these other countries. Here you're protected. Lawyers everywhere, you know, OSHA to protect you. You basically can be a total fucking idiot here, which most people are, you know. But over there, you got to fucking protect yourself. You know, like my to go to the station near my house, there was like a metal thing sticking out of a building at eye level, rusty and sharp, right at eye level on the sidewalk, on a major sidewalk. It's sticking out like this, you know. And you'd walk by, and if you weren't looking, it might kill you if you're walking, because it could go through your eyeball into your brain, like, because you're walking and there's this sharp metal thing attached to the building, like, and you had to avoid that. And then, then there's all these sidewalks that go down that you could, if you're not paying attention, there's no blocks, or your bike could go in there and you just endure a face in the concrete, you know. Yeah, you can, like, people all the time in Shanghai, they'll ruin their knee walking, or they'll get hit by a car, or they'll get their eye, lose an eye. Happens all the time. All the time to expats. You have to be very aware of people, situations, brewing, you know. The things that you think are dangerous are probably not dangerous. Most of the time when you get in an area and it seems very dangerous, it's totally fine. Most of the time. Yeah, it just seems dangerous. But if you act scared, that can make it dangerous. But it actually isn't dangerous. The most dangerous things often seem very mellow, like just a bunch of kids fucking around. And then it can become very dangerous. Indeed, even get killed. So you got to kind of get very confident. Like I walk into people fucking all the ghettos and guns and everything, and I just don't even worry about it. They never bother me. And I fucking do not give a fuck. Like, I really don't. I will walk in the most sketchy place, drug dealers and guns and machine guns and knives, and they're like, fuck with you, boy, you know, and I'm just like, I just walk right in. And the gun to my head, it's like, shoot me. Like, seriously, I've done it many times. I'm like, do you really want to shoot me? Is that really going to do anything? And the guy's like, you're different. All right. I like this guy. Then I'm in, you know. So, you know, you just kind of get through that kind of thing. Because also, too, they understand that, like, I am that way. Because it's because of the way I was raised. I kind of realized that there's no benefit in being afraid. So you just no benefit. It's a dead end road. If somebody really wants to kill you, it's going to kill you, right? But if they're not, they're not. So I realized like at a deep level when I was a kid, that you just have to just like, there's no benefit. Like you can try to hide, but they're just going to keep going. because they just want to intimidate you. And I realized there was no benefit. He's not a tough guy. I just realized there was no benefit. But there's benefit because I have a lot of friends who are now dead and stuff. They were major criminals. Like I have major criminal friends. And they like me because I don't care. Like I don't judge them. And they know what I'm going to steal from them. You know, it's true. Yeah. So I think, you know, that you can have different kinds of friends. Yeah. And they need friends too, right? Criminals need friends. Oh, yeah. Because they'll tell you, like, you're the first friend I've ever had. I had to kill everybody else. You know? Yeah, because they usually try to get into business or something. I'm totally serious. That guy told me that straight up. He's like, this is amazing. Like a real friend. Yeah. 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 He died, actually. He got killed about a year after that. Yeah, in a parking lot. Yeah. So you kind of got to open your mind, you know. Criminals are totally cool. Like, I like criminals because they're totally different thinking. I don't like people hurting people, but like a lot of guys, like that guy was Lebanese, like he never had a chance, right? He had a tough life, right? This is the only kind of way he could go, you know. That was his way, right?
I just wanted to share a small anecdote about that because it really isn't as, like he said, like Ronin said, there's not really much of a benefit in being afraid, and there's much more upside actually in not being afraid. And recently I kind of did something similar in Florida, and I was with a buddy of mine, and we were just bored, and him and I always talk about like taking risks and kind of increasing our, like, that rubber band, kind of stretching it out a bit, pushing it. And we kind of Googled like the worst area that we could find in Florida around us, with like the most murders and the most crime and everything. And we purposely just went there. And our whole thing was like, let's just get out and just go to the worst part we could find and just start talking to people. And we did. And we just started talking to like random people. They tried to sell us heroin, prostitution. Immediately, everybody came up to us within seconds. We were surrounded by at least 3 or 4 different types of underground business people. And they were actually really cool. Like, we just kind of hung out, and we told them the truth. We're like, hey, we're just kind of exploring the area. And they were like, oh, cool, yeah. You know, son got shot the other day, you know, whatever, he's doing all right now. And we're just like kind of shooting the shit. And then we got offered a few things. We're like, nah, I'm good. And we left. And then it was a cool experience. And I don't regret it at all. And it wasn't that bad. I think people kind of look at where you're at, and they don't really fuck with you unless they really need to, or they see an opportunity. And unless you're like just, you know, crazy looking watch or massive amounts of cash just floating out of your pocket, like they're not really going to do anything. Like he said, like they want entertainment too.
They're rational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys are like people who look like they don't belong, you know, in these
Yeah,
places.
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, you know, oh, they're here for, you know, services, right? That's the kind of the first thing they go to, you know, if you're in the kind of these seedy things. And then if you're not a soft target, you really don't have much to worry about typically, like in those kind of situations. It's super interesting though. I don't know that I would have necessarily elected to go out, you know, in certain parts, but yeah, I mean, it's not often as scary or as, you know, as much danger as you kind of perceive, you know.
Yeah, true. It's like the whole world, everyone's afraid of everything. They're so fucking afraid of everything. Everybody's afraid. And they don't do shit, you know? It's like, I don't know. Not much benefit. At the end of the day, you know, we're all going to die, right? We're going to be in the ground, you know?
Well, it's like valuing safety above everything else, right? You were getting to yesterday, you know, with the underwater welding, right? It's like, yeah, if you have the skills and the ability to go down there and do that job, right? Why not go get that money? But if you value, you know, your safety kind of more than going to get that money, right? Or if you need safety, then that's gonna limit your opportunities, right? So you won't be able to do something like that or do an oil rigging thing if you value safety, you know, or somebody else keeping you safe rather than you being able to keep your head on the swivel, right? Know that all that bolt's looking like it's gonna be loose. Maybe we should do something about it or get out of the way, right? If you value somebody else protecting you or safety over, you know, going to get that money, then it really limits your possibilities, your options, you know?
Yeah, and being in the middle of stuff is very instructive. Like, let's say things pop off, you know? Like, I've been in a couple situations where things popped off, and then I saw, like, the dynamics of everything happening around me. And it was very interesting because I realized you could navigate it, like shit's going down like hard, but it's like not everybody, you just see people are doing that. The guy's throwing that thing's going down there. It's like, you kind of just weave your way out of there, it's like weird. It's like, it's not a uniform thing,
The sky's falling.
Yeah. The sky's falling. Yeah. It's just like some shit's going down, right? Guys might be dead, but not everybody's dead, And like there's probably some reason why they did something. There were some situations they were in that you weren't in. It's like you're able to discern, and then you learn too, like what is actually not wise to do, right? Because there's things that they're maybe right or whatever, but they're not wise. So you have to have that kind of realistic edge too,
Right, but not wise.
Yeah. There's a lot of people here in the West.
Give an example of another like a right but not wise thing.
Well, like the people like going to Africa to stop the hunting of the fucking different animals, for the horns and stuff. Like those guys apparently are very bad people.
Yeah.
They will fuck you up. Like you don't want to be the guy that they don't like.
Your hand sanitizer
Like-
ain't gonna do anything.
Yeah. Hand sand, yeah, right. Your leather jacket, it's not gonna, yeah. It's like, yeah, no. So like, there's things you just have to let them be. You're not gonna, you know what I mean. Like if you're putting yourself into that position as the guy that's gonna stop them from making a living, you know what I mean. Like there's a point where they're just like, they won't kill you very easily because you're a Westerner and it's problems and this and that. But that Camarona, right? That guy that was he was the DEA, went down to Mexico.
Oh yeah.
That guy.
Avocado thing?
Yeah, he was like going to do the right thing no matter what. And the cartels never killed the DEA before that. But he was like Mexican American. He was just like totally going to do the right thing to the end. He didn't give a shit. He was like a Jesus kind of character. But he just died the worst death. And then after he died, then they would kill DEA agents because they realized they could. And the payback wouldn't be as bad as they thought. So it started a whole new round of things. But, I like him in a way. He was an interesting guy. Like, definitely the guy's got balls for sure. But
he created an unintended consequence.
there was consequences too, yeah. Because now it's not safe. It's no longer, if you're DA, you're not going to get targeted. Like, they realize,
Wow.
it wasn't as bad as they thought, And there's a lot of benefit because he was like uncovering all kinds of farms and shit and just telling them where they were. And like huge fortunes were being lost, And then finally there was one guy who said, this guy's got to go,
Right, but not wise.
Yeah. So you do have to kind of, you can do, the thing is, if you want to be a Camarona kind of guy, there's nothing wrong with that. You can make your,
Place in history.
your place in history. You can make your mark in the world. And if that's what you want to do, as long as you know that's what you're doing, that's totally cool. I personally, I was not into the child kidnappers, beggars. So I would fuck them up, right? And I knew that it was risking criminal charges, right? And I wanted to go and just, I don't want to say on tape, but I was I wanted to break down the whole ring. I'm still into it. I'm still think it's a good idea. But there's less and less of them now. But the thing is that if you think it's worthwhile, at least you have to know yourself enough and the world enough to make that decision. I can respect it, but don't go in just doing it without thinking. You got to fucking think about it. And even the unintended consequences of Camarona, if he knew that there's a target on DAs after that, maybe he wouldn't have done it. Because he probably thought it was just him. And it's going to change things, and they're going to go in and destroy the cartels now. And it totally didn't happen, right? So, maybe, I don't know what he would have done, but I'm not saying you can't know the results. And if you want to make your mark in the world, go fucking do it. It's fine. I'm that kind of guy too, so went to Tiananmen Square, right? So, but definitely got to know what you're doing. But this stuff comes up when you travel. You get challenged, your basic, deep beliefs. This is not bullshit. You're going to see things you don't like. You know what I mean? Yeah. You'll have to wrestle with those. And I found most people are fucking pussies through this. That's why I talk this way. Because I see people just being fucking hypocrites, you know. If you want to talk, you fucking got to come here. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question for you, Ronin. You've explained how you are perfectly okay talking with just regular folks, very high value folks with lots of money, dangerous people, you know, heads of clans, and the homeless guy.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Like, I don't know how you go about doing that, and I would like if you could talk to the crowd and let us know how what's your view. And here's the background to that is that this is me speaking for myself, and I think a lot of people feel this way, this pressure that, okay, once you belong to a certain group, such as an upper middle class group, then you don't talk to the poor, or you don't talk to this, or you don't talk, or like, if you're with the cool people, you don't talk to the nerdy people. And I've known people that were able to go all across the spectrum. They talk to everybody, and they somehow don't lose their cool. So how do you go about that? Like, let's say if you were talking to your friend that's rich, and then suddenly wouldn't you be afraid that you are talking to a homeless person? How would you manage that? I know it doesn't, but
I mean, it's complicated.
Very careful with it then.
It's complicated, but basically, like, I had low self-esteem growing up, right? So I could relate to those guys. The guys at the bottom. Yeah, I could totally relate to those guys. I couldn't see myself going up. You know, like, totally could relate. So it's easy for me to relate to them. Like, no problem. No problem. I had to learn to go the other way. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being real. We did.
Whatever. Any other questions? Any questions? I guess that's it. All right, guys. Thanks.